Don't come to the wedding, fake mom, Marley said with a smile. It's true, we're not related by blood. But I've always treated her as if she were my own daughter. Are you serious? Of course I'm serious. My real parents will be there. You can just stay home. Marley said this firmly, without a second thought. Is that so? Gladly, I replied with a smile. She clearly didn't expect me to agree so easily. What? Why? Marley mumbled under her breath, confused. At this point, she should have just calmly said, well then, definitely won't come. Maybe it's something she inherited from her father, the lack of follow-through. Because I know everything. Marley's eyes widened at my words. Seeing her reaction, I laughed and told her a little secret. A few days later, on the wedding day, while I quietly stayed home, my phone buzzed with a message from Marley. Everything went just as planned. The wedding was perfect. After reading the message aloud, I smiled as I answered the call that followed. I am Carly, a 46-year-old single mother. I've always had a tendency to just go along with what others said. Carly, you're so cute. This outfit will definitely look great on you. Really? Well, okay, I'll wear this one then. I actually preferred more comfortable blue clothes, but I chose the cute pink dress that Miranda recommended. You're smart, why not try for this high school? All right, I'll do it. Norm suggested the high school I ended up attending. It wasn't that I didn't have opinions of my own. I just found it easier to go along with what people said rather than stir up unnecessary conflict by voicing my own thoughts. Still, in the end, it was my decision, so I took full responsibility for it. I can't believe you actually got in. Carly, you're my pride and joy. I know, right? Plus, you're such a fashionista. I'm so proud of you too. Thanks. Hearing that makes all the hard work worth it. Even if I was easily influenced, I worked hard to get into the school I chose and learned how to wear the clothes Miranda recommended. That's how I grew up, going along with things but turning out pretty normal. I never had any real experience with dating. Carly is so cute, why doesn't she have a boyfriend? If you keep waiting, you'll end up with some sketchy guy. Isn't that a little extreme? Miranda always called me cute, but my face was just plain, nothing special. On top of that, my friends were always on guard, saying, Carly, you're too easily influenced. You have to be careful. So the men who showed any interest in me were scared off, and eventually, no one bothered to approach me at all. That's how I ended up without a boyfriend. I don't want to meddle, but... Eventually, Norm got concerned and introduced me to a man. Norm is a department head at a company I know. The man was the son of his colleague, and like me, he was single. Apparently, the parents thought it was a good idea to introduce us. I'm okay with that. Even though the man was the son of the company's president. I knew Norm couldn't refuse the idea. With that in mind, I agreed to Norm's proposal. I'm Arthur. It's nice to meet you. Likewise, it's a pleasure. That's how I met Arthur, my future husband. We went out to dinner, arranged by our parents, as a trial. Then we exchanged numbers and started going on more dates. I'm into girls like Carly, calm and composed. If you're okay with it, I'd like to date you officially. Eventually, he confessed his feelings to me. I admired his serious and reliable demeanor, so I accepted his confession, and we started dating. The following year, we tied the knot and began what seemed like a peaceful married life. I have to work this weekend. Oh, really? That's a shame, but if it's for work, I understand. About 2 years into our marriage, Arthur, now positioned to take over as the next CEO, was working even on weekends. What do you mean by a shame? Do you have a problem with it? No, it's just that we were planning on going shopping together this weekend for the first time in a while. Hearing my words, Arthur let out a long sigh. He shot me a look of irritation, his eyes heavy with frustration. Who do you think makes it possible for you to be a housewife? It's because I work hard that you don't have to. When we got married, Arthur insisted that I stay home as a housewife. Sure, I knew that without his income, we wouldn't be able to live as we do. But did I really deserve to be spoken to like this, just for expressing a little disappointment? I'm sorry if I upset you. I was just looking forward to spending time with you. When I apologized, Arthur ignored me and went straight to his room. Recently, Arthur had become cold and distant toward me. Did I do something wrong? I mumbled to myself, but I couldn't think of anything. Being a housewife, I made sure to never slack on my household chores. I had maintained the same lifestyle for Arthur since our early newlywed days. At this rate, having kids is just a distant dream. I had always loved children. Even before we got married, I had told Arthur that I wanted a big family. I've always dreamed of being surrounded by lots of kids too. He used to say things like that. But now, we barely had any time together as a couple. Is this really who Arthur is now? Ever since we got married, Arthur had completely changed. I quit my job as he said, but he would say, "You know you'd never survive without me," making it clear how little he thought of me. Maybe I should just go shopping by myself. Clear my head a little. There was no point in dwelling on it. If Arthur wasn't coming, at least I could enjoy a relaxing day shopping alone. With that mindset, I decided to take a small break from everything. Wait, Arthur? However, that decision led me to witness something I wish I hadn't. I decided to check out the newly opened mall, and there, I saw Arthur. He was walking arm in arm with a woman. That woman. I know her. I recognized her immediately. Selena, the heiress of a wealthy family that everyone in the area knew. Why is Arthur with her? He was smiling, following Selena's constantly shifting expressions as if charmed by her. It had been so long since I'd seen that look on his face. I was frozen, unable to say anything, just staring in disbelief. Could he really be cheating on me? As I whispered those words to myself, countless thoughts started running through my mind. If Arthur is cheating, should I divorce him? But I need proof first. How do I even start? Carly, what are you doing? When I came to my senses, I was back home, and Arthur was speaking to me with a puzzled look. Why are you just standing there? And where's dinner? I come home exhausted, and you haven't even run a bath for me? Arthur, are you cheating on me? Arthur spoke to me, and I accidentally let something slip. As soon as I did, his body began to tremble. I saw you walking with another woman today. Now, what would he say? Would he get angry? Try to dodge the truth? Ask for a divorce? While I was expecting one of these responses, he said, I'm sorry. The truth is, she threatened to break the contract unless I dated her. He started apologizing, offering excuses. According to him, the woman's parents were connected to Roland's business, and he had been pressured into going on dates with her. But the one I truly love is Carly. I need you, Carly. Okay. But promise me you won't see her again. With all this information thrown at me so quickly, I found myself confused and somehow forgave him. Thank you, Carly. Arthur smiled as he thanked me. From then on, he came straight home after work, and he blocked her contact. I'm sure we'll be okay. We can make this work again. Watching Arthur's behavior, I began to think maybe we could fix our marriage. But that hope was soon shattered.
I'm sorry for dragging you along today.
No, I had a good time too. A year after I discovering his affair, I was out with Zoe for the day.
Oh, I got some delicious tea the other day. Would you like to try some?
Really? Well, if you're offering, I'd love to. My relationship with my in-laws had been good. In the early days of our marriage, we tried not to interfere in each other's lives.
I'm really sorry about my idiot son. Thank you for not divorcing him after all that. We'll do whatever we can to make it up to you.
Arthur's misdeeds brought us closer. And as a result, Zoe and I became good friends.
Wait, do you hear crying? You're right. Is that coming from Carly's house?
When Zoe and I arrived at the house, there was a small child crying at the front door. We hurried over to the child, immediately trying to offer comfort. But all the child could do was cry.
Mommy, Mommy!
And we couldn't figure out what was going on.
I'll call the police right now.
Please. Wait, is this a note? As I tried to comfort the child, I found a small note tucked into their pocket. It was written in Arthur's handwriting.
Take Marley and the house, just let me go.
As soon as I finished reading, a terrible feeling washed over me. No way. Did Arthur run off with that woman? Unfortunately, my suspicion turned out to be correct. Shortly afterward, the police and Roland intervened, and Arthur was found in a hotel with Selena.
I wanted to leave behind a boring woman and a troublesome child to live happily with Selena.
Arthur, now charged with child abandonment, reportedly said that, according to him, he had met Selena shortly after we got married at a party filled with wealthy people and started an affair with her. Then, Selena got pregnant with Marley.
When I realized it was too late to do anything but have the baby.
Even though Selena gave birth to Marley, she had no intention of raising her. Her parents spoiled her and didn't care for the baby. The only person who had any sense was her grandmother, but she had passed away.
With no one left to help, and Marley being difficult in her toddler years, I dumped her at your boring house. Arthur came to be with me, and we could have been happy,
said Selena, who was arrested along with Arthur. It's just horrible. Not only did she pretend to repent and betray me, but she even abandoned her own daughter. After putting up with enough, I decided to divorce Arthur. You've been through a lot, Marley. The real issue was what to do with Marley, who was left behind. With both Arthur and Selena arrested, Marley had no place to go. Even Selena's parents refused to take her in.
The Rolands aren't in a position to take her either.
Zoe, devastated by her son's reckless actions, had collapsed. Roland, trying to support her while also managing the company, didn't have the capacity to take Marley. In the midst of it all, Marley clung to my clothes, looking so lonely.
Marley, would you like to live with me?
Before I realized it, I had spoken those words to her. At just 2 years old, without love or affection from those around her, she was destined to end up in a foster home. Maybe I felt sympathy for her.
Raising a child isn't as easy as you think.
Exactly, and you're still in your 20s. You can start over. Naturally, my parents opposed my decision. But my mind was made up. For the first time, I had made a choice on my own, and there was no way I could abandon Marley and let her suffer because of Arthur and Selena.
All right. If you're that determined, we'll support you.
And so, I took Marley in to raise her.
Marley, did you forget anything?
I'm fine. I'm not a little kid anymore. It's been 20 years since then. Raising her was no small task, but Marley grew up just fine. And by the way, Marley knows that we're not related by blood. I had planned to keep it a secret, but a tactless relative spilled the truth to her.
Well, you do tend to be a bit forgetful sometimes. I think that's something I got from Carly.
Even after learning the truth, Marley still sees me as her mom. Recently, she graduated from college and is now about to get married. Today, she's going to check out wedding venues with her fiancé.
I'm heading out now.
Take care. Watching her leave with such a happy smile, I turned back to focus on my own work. On the day I decided to take Marley in, I started looking for a job. I could no longer rely on Arthur, and I had to make my own income to raise Marley.
Why don't you come work for my company?
That's when he made the offer. Thanks to him, I found a job and was even placed in a department where I could mostly work from home, allowing me to spend more time with Marley. I've continued that job ever since, moving up the ranks, and now I earn a solid income.
I want to be just like Carly.
Inspired by me, Marley worked hard and landed a job at the same company. As I watched my daughter, whom I raised through so many challenges, grow into her own, I stayed motivated to keep doing my best at work. I'm back.
Welcome home. Did something happen?
I expected her to come back excited and full of energy. But to my surprise, she returned looking troubled.
Did something happen with Edmund?
Edmund is Marley's fiancé. The two met in high school, where they were senior and junior members of the same club. Marley made the first move, and they started dating. After graduating college, they kept their promise to get married. Edmund is a bit of a timid young man.
It's nothing.
She said that as she headed to her room. From that day, something changed in her. She always seemed deep in thought, and when I tried to talk to her,
Yeah.
all I got was a half-hearted answer. That attitude made me think.
Something must have happened, right?
So, I reached out to someone.
Hey, I need to talk to you.
One day, Marley approached me, her gaze restless and uneasy. And I braced myself, knowing that the day I dreaded had finally come.
I don't want you to come to the wedding.
She spoke without looking at me. Even though I had been preparing for this moment, hearing it from my daughter still stung deeply.
I've decided to invite my real parents to the wedding. So? Honestly, my real mom is way prettier, and I think she'll fit in much better at my wedding. Plus, having both my real parents there will look good.
Marley blurted out all at once, her eyes fixed on me, gauging my reaction. Don't come to the wedding, fake mom. Marley said with a smile. How long had she been thinking about this? It's true, we're not related by blood. But I've always treated her as if she were my own daughter.
Are you serious? Of course I'm serious.
My real parents will be there.
You can just stay home.
Her words were resolute, firm. Is that so? Gladly. I replied with a smile. She clearly didn't expect me to agree so easily.
What? Why?
Marley mumbled under her breath, confused. At this point, she should have just calmly said,
Well then, definitely won't come.
Maybe it's something she inherited from her father, the lack of follow-through.
Because I know everything.
Marley's eyes widened in surprise at my words. Seeing her reaction, I laughed and told her a little secret.
There's no need to worry.
Really?
Yes, so you go ahead and do whatever makes you happy.
When I said that, Marley gave a small nod.
Let's make the most of this. Enjoy it, both of us.
A few days later, on the day of the wedding, I stayed home, just as planned. Then, my phone buzzed with a message from Marley.
Everything went just as planned. The wedding was perfect.
As I read the message aloud, I couldn't help but smile when the phone rang right after.
It's been a long time. What do you want? What do you think? You know why I'm calling.
The voice was familiar. It was Arthur.
What did you teach Marley? I loved her like my own daughter, with all my heart. Don't joke around. We were humiliated because of her.
Then, without waiting for me to ask, Arthur started recounting what had happened at the wedding. Arthur and Selina had attended the wedding in my place. At the reception, Edmund's mother, Bernice, apparently asked,
Who are you? Where's Carly?
Arthur had tried to explain.
We're the real parents.
But Marley cut in.
Those two are the ones I told you about.
Upon hearing that, Bernice had nodded meaningfully, saying, Oh, I see. Arthur felt there was something off in her reaction, but decided to brush it off and enjoy the wedding feast instead. Soon after, it was time for Marley to read her gratitude letter.
The people I'm truly grateful for aren't the ones sitting here. It's Carly, who raised me for 20 years.
Marley spoke about how her parents had abandoned her when she was just 2, how they were arrested, and how despite having no contact with her, they suddenly wanted to be part of her life now.
I was born to parents like this. That's my only regret.
That's how Marley finished her words, and it earned her cold stares from everyone around her.
So what? I only spoke the truth, didn't I? Do you even understand what we went through because of it? How could I? You abandoned your responsibilities and now you want to act like you're the perfect parents.
Technically, they had received compensation during the divorce trial for infidelity. However, it wasn't from the two of them. Selina's parents gave them the money, calling it a parting payment. The condition was that Marley couldn't publicly acknowledge that they were her parents.
And despite all that, it was you who reached out and tried to act like you were their daughter, wasn't it?
It was on the day when Marley and Edmund went to check out the wedding venue. As they stepped out, overjoyed by how perfect everything seemed for their dream wedding, they were stopped.
It's been a while, Marley. You've grown into a beauty, just like me.
Those were the words they were greeted with. When faced with her biological parents for the first time, Marley was confused. They immediately revealed themselves, saying they were her real parents. And then,
It seems you demanded, you're our daughter, so it's time for you to support us.
Their shamelessness knew no bounds. When I heard this story, I was furious with Arthur and Selina.
What's wrong with that? She's our child. It's only natural to support the parents. You abandoned your responsibilities as parents, and now you expect her to support you? You must be joking.
I wasn't the only one filled with anger. Marley herself resented these two for showing up now, and after discussing it with Edmund, they decided to publicly humiliate Arthur and Selina at the wedding.
By the way, where are you now? We're in the family waiting room. Why? Stay right there. Someone's coming to meet you right now.
As soon as I said that,
Arthur!
I heard a loud voice on the other end of the phone. It seemed Roland had arrived.
Why is Dad here? You said it's a child's responsibility to serve their parents, right? Well, now it's time for you to pay your dues to your own parents.
With that, I hung up.
Now then, I better get started on making dinner for my lovely daughter and the others.
Tonight, we plan to celebrate with Marley and the others. Rolling up my sleeves, I began preparing her favorite dishes.
We're home. Excuse us.
Welcome back. And good job today. Soon after, Marley and Edmund arrived at the house. I greeted them at the door, and they both entered with smiles.
So, what happened to those two? They've been taken care of by Roland. He told them if they needed money, they should try working for it.
The reason Arthur and Selena had suddenly come back into Marley's life? It was because the company that had been supporting them, run by Selena's parents, had gone bankrupt.
That company had a terrible reputation. Family-run businesses like that usually don't end well.
Just like Roland had explained, Selena's father was the CEO, her mother the vice president, and all the top executives were close family. Had they run it like a proper business, things might have been different. Instead, they treated their employees poorly, bossing them around and making them work without any days off. Their employees' frustrations had been building for some time, and then Arthur and Selena showed up.
Those two acted as they pleased, and finally, the employees couldn't take it anymore.
Outraged by Selena family's arrogance, the employees started reporting the truth about. In no time, the company collapsed. Even though there was income from real estate aside from running the company, we were able to live lavishly for a while. However, the victims of the Selena family were far more numerous than expected, and we had no choice but to sell those properties for compensation.
So, now that they can't make ends meet, they're coming to me? What a nuisance.
When I told Marley what Roland had told me, she grimaced and muttered under her breath. Next to her, Edmund gave a wry smile.
I'm embarrassed to have parents like them.
Sorry for dragging you into this, Edmund.
Don't worry about it. I promised to make you happy, so this much is only natural.
Honestly, if it weren't for Edmund, I probably wouldn't be able to talk to Marley like this, smiling. When I noticed something had changed about Marley, I reached out to her. Actually, on that day, 2 people claiming to be Marley's real parents showed up. Apparently, Marley had told him to keep it quiet, but Edmund thought that if he didn't tell me, it could damage our relationship. So, Edmund had confided in me about the contact from Arthur and the brazen pair who were planning to cause embarrassment at the wedding.
If it weren't for Edmund, I might have ended up resenting Marley.
Marley gave a wry smile at my words this time. There was a reason why she hadn't explained everything and had tried to push me away.
I just thought that I'd end up causing you more trouble, Carly.
As the two began fixating on her, Marley feared that being around them would bring problems to me too. That's why she deliberately tried to distance herself.
After all, Carly, you've gone through so much raising me, someone you had no blood ties or legal obligation to care for. I didn't want to trouble you any further. I understand how you feel. But please, let me worry about you, at least as your mother.
When I said that, Marley smiled shyly. Edmund watched quietly, with a gentle smile.
By the way, what's going to happen to those 2 now? Oh, I heard Roland's going to send them off to a relative's factory.
It turns out, we weren't the only ones angry about this recent contact. Yes, Roland was furious too, especially with Arthur, his own son.
Not only did they disgrace us, but they also caused trouble for the grandkids. Unforgivable.
That's what Roland said when he found out through me that Arthur had contacted Marley. He took swift action to deal with them.
They say that factory is really tough. I doubt they'll have the time or energy to bother us anymore.
Edmund looked visibly relieved at my words. He, who had no real involvement but still went out of his way for Marley. It's because of him that I feel confident leaving Marley in such good hands.
All right, enough talk about those people. Let's celebrate properly.
When I brought out the feast I had prepared, the 2 of them were overjoyed.
I won't let anyone interfere with your happiness.
Watching the 2 of them, I muttered to myself. Shortly after that, I ended up facing Arthur and his group. The week after the wedding, Marley and Edmund had gone on their honeymoon, and I was back to my usual routine at the office. At first, I had been working remotely, but ever since Marley started middle school, I had gone back to commuting.
Hey, Carly. You're Carly, aren't you? Huh?
I heard a voice calling out to me as I stood in front of the company building, so I turned around. There, standing in front of me, was a man who looked rather ragged.
Who are you? It's me, Arthur.
Apparently, this man was Arthur. 20 years ago, he was young and could even be considered handsome for his age, but the Arthur standing in front of me now looked far older than his years. That's why I couldn't immediately recognize him. You haven't changed at all, so I knew right away. Hey, I'm in a tough spot right now.
Do you need something? I'm busy with work, you know?
I cut him off before he could continue. Honestly, I didn't have time to deal with him. I know I messed up 20 years ago. But what do you say we give it another try?
What?
Selena tricked me. It was always supposed to be you, Carly. You're the one I was meant to be with. He stepped closer as he said this, but I instinctively backed away. I couldn't believe how far he had fallen. As these thoughts ran through my mind, I quickly sent a message to Roland, letting him know that Arthur was standing right in front of me. I figured you'd help me out if I asked.
Don't underestimate me. I'm not the pushover you remember.
I used to be easily swayed. Back then, I probably would have done anything Arthur asked of me. But Marley changed all that.
Ever since I decided to take in Marley and raise her, I've become a different person. That's what being a parent does to you.
You can't protect your child if you're just going along with everything. That determination was what changed me.
And I don't need you in my life anymore.
I said firmly, and Arthur looked genuinely shocked. I didn't know why he looked that way, but I glared at him coldly.
Why is it that everything bad happens to me?
Suddenly, Arthur snapped and lunged toward me.
What are you doing? Chief Director, are you all right?
Just then, another employee ran over and restrained Arthur. It seemed Roland had already instructed someone to keep an eye out.
What? Chief Director? Yes. Thanks to someone who ran away, I ended up becoming the next CEO.
Originally, Arthur was supposed to be the one to take over the company. But after his mistakes with Selena, he was let go from that role. And in his place, I was promoted.
I'm the chief director for now, but I'll be taking over as CEO soon. So, thank you for abandoning your responsibility.
I smiled sweetly as I said this, and Arthur's face twisted with frustration. Shortly after, Roland arrived, and Arthur was escorted away.
Apparently, he escaped when his relatives weren't watching. This time, they're going to keep a close eye on him to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Roland explained.
And once again, my son has caused you trouble.
He added, apologizing deeply. By the way, it wasn't just Arthur who had run off. Selena had also escaped. She had been calling everyone she knew, begging for help, but no one agreed to assist her.
I'm really sorry for what happened back then. But now they want me to work in a factory? I've never had a real job before. How can I do this?
She had even tried to contact me, but I had already blocked her number, so her messages went unread. Eventually, Selena was caught too. Under stricter surveillance than before, the two of them were now stuck doing grueling work, cursing each other as they toiled away.
I might have been able to avoid responsibility until now, but from here on out, I'll have to take on my share. Once Marley comes back, I'll need to tell her right away.
With that thought in mind, I threw myself into work once again. Afterward, the Selena family quietly scattered. It seems they're all paying for the responsibilities they tried so hard to run away from.
I wish I could have seen Carly stand up to them herself.
When I told Marley the whole story, she looked disappointed while handing me the souvenirs from her honeymoon. But there was a mischievous glint in her eyes, making me smile despite everything.
So, they won't be bothering us again, right?
Yes, but just to be sure, I'm planning to move. It's a little lonely staying in this house alone anyway. Marley, who had been living with me, was getting ready to leave now that she was married. And I, too, had plans to move closer to my office. Incidentally, both my family and my in-laws were also moving. While part of it was to protect ourselves from Arthur, it was also because they were planning to retire to a quieter, rural life.
Why don't you just move in with us?
You're newlyweds, enjoy your time together. But you can visit any time you want. I couldn't tell Marley, but now that my child-rearing days were over, I was really looking forward to enjoying some alone time for a while.
I see. Thank you, Mom, for everything you've done for me.
It seemed like Marley could sense my thoughts. Her wide, grateful smile made me feel like all my efforts were finally worth it. Thank you for being my daughter, I said, and together we shared a warm laugh. After that, I took over the company from Roland and became the new president. Though it was a lot of work, my days were full and fulfilling. I have to thank him for giving me the company and for letting me be Marley's mother. Arthur and Selena, meanwhile, seem to have lost the energy to escape and are resigned to a life of endless work. They're probably regretting their actions now. All right, time to forget about those two and focus on my work. I pushed them out of my mind and got back to the task at hand. Some time later, Marley invited me to a restaurant. This place is beautiful, right? It's actually Edmund's family's restaurant. I turned around at the sound of her voice and found her standing there in a wedding dress. My eyes widened in surprise, and she gave me a playful smile. Carly, I wanted you to see me on my special day. Her words filled me with emotion from the depths of my heart. To be honest, even though I understood the situation, I had been sad about not being able to attend her wedding. Today is the real wedding. It seems that the previous ceremony, attended by Arthur, had only a few close allies in attendance. Edmund's parents, who were part of that group, had suggested hosting a restaurant wedding at their family business. I see. You look absolutely stunning, Marley. Thank you. She smiled, radiating happiness, as she walked toward Edmund, who was waiting for her in his tuxedo. I watched her go, my heart full, with a smile on my face. Believe it or not, this restaurant is ours, and it's meant for my oldest son and his wife. If you don't like it, then get a divorce, yelled my husband in a fit of rage. Following him, my husband's brother, now called Mike, made his arrogant claim. I'm part of this family too, you know? Surely, I deserve some part in the restaurant. Not to be left out, Mike's wife, Karen, also berated me. You don't deserve to run such a fine establishment. Get out already! I felt a surge of anger within me. I couldn't care less about what happened to these people. I decided there and then to put them in their place, once and for all. The first order of business to correct their misguided notions. I can't help but smirk at the thought of the look on their faces when they find out the truth. My name is Natalie Farrell. At 35, I'm running a sushi restaurant. I have many regular customers, and thankfully, the business is doing well. The shop was originally started by my grandparents. Both of my parents passed away from illness when I was young, so my grandparents became my guardians. As I helped out in the shop, I became interested in becoming a sushi chef and taking over the shop. After graduating from culinary school, I started working in the restaurant immediately. I learned how to make sushi from my grandfather and how to serve customers from my grandmother. Thanks to their guidance, I became a competent chef and developed proper etiquette. For a while, the three of us ran the shop, but when I turned 23, a man named Steve Farrell came to our shop. He was 5 years older than me. He used to be a sushi chef, but the shop he had been working at had closed down, so he was looking for a new job. My grandparents were considering retirement due to their old age. They had mentioned that they wanted one more employee, so we decided to hire him. His skills were undeniable, and he quickly became a valuable asset. I learned a lot from him, and we eventually grew close and got married when I was 25. My grandparents thought Steve was a reliable and honest man, and they felt secure with him. Our married life went well, and after my grandparents retired, we continued to run the shop together, supporting each other. However, when I was 31, my grandmother passed away from an illness. The following year, my grandfather also passed away. Since then, my husband's attitude started to change gradually. When I was in the kitchen, he would become grumpy and started saying things like, "You should focus on serving the customers. I want to hone my sushi making skills. So, I want to be in the kitchen as much as possible." Since he was so passionate about sushi, I understood and began to take over more of the serving duties. However, the real reason behind my husband's change of attitude was something different. About half a year later, I overheard him saying something on the phone. "Natalie is a woman, right? I don't like the fact that she's a sushi chef." I was very sad. I was shocked to learn that my loving husband thought this way about me. Sushi is a traditional dish, and there's a strong tradition of male dominance in this field. Therefore, the number of female sushi chefs is low. However, this attitude is starting to change, and there are more restaurants accepting female chefs. And I believe I'm able to provide sushi that satisfies our customers. I wish he wouldn't dislike me just because I'm a woman. After hanging up the phone, my husband finally noticed my presence and hastily tried to gloss over his comments. I was just stressed out and said it without thinking. "I promise I won't say it again. Will you forgive me?" Seeing him seemingly regretful, I decided to forgive him. However, my husband started causing more problems. One day, I noticed that $3,000 had been withdrawn from our savings account. When I confronted him, he said, "My brother Mike lost his job, and I had to help him out. He's family, after all. There's nothing we can do." Frankly, I didn't like it. The reason being, Mike is a problematic person. He initially aimed to be a chef but quit early due to the rigorous training, and has been job hopping ever since. Every time we met, he would ask for money, and he gave off a very irresponsible impression. His wife, Karen, also can't hold a job. Despite this, she always has an aggressive attitude towards me, saying things like, "You must be so tired from working all the time. I'm a housewife, so I enjoy my free life." I wondered if there was any need to support these people with hundreds of thousands of dollars. They are adults, and they are healthy. I wish they could figure it out for themselves. Our restaurant was profitable, but our savings were steadily decreasing. At first, when I pointed out to him that he was giving too much, he seemed to reflect on his behavior and said, "Sorry." But later on, he said, "Natalie, you're the one managing our savings and household budget, right? You should just manage it better," and refused to listen to my advice. The situation with my husband was getting worse, and I was starting to worry seriously about our future savings. I briefly considered divorce, but eventually decided against it. Steve is an excellent craftsman, and without him, our restaurant would suffer. Besides, Steve has always been a responsible person. I clung to this thin hope that he would pull himself together someday. Later, I would realize how naive this thought was. Years have passed since my grandparents passed away, and we arrive at the present day. At this point, an event occurred that I could no longer tolerate. On our restaurant's day off, while I was doing the laundry at home, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Mike and Karen.
Hey. From today on,
I can eat sushi every day now, right?
lucky me.
Their words made no sense. As I was at a loss, Steve appeared and I demanded an explanation. Casually, he said, "They'll be living with us for a while from today on." I was even more confused. Upon further inquiry, I learned that Mike and Karen were in dire financial straits and couldn't even afford their apartment rent. Upon learning this, Steve had taken it upon himself to allow them to stay with us for a while. What's more, neither Mike nor Karen were working, so we were expected to cover their living expenses as well. I told Steve,
Don't make decisions like that without discussing with me first.
But he shrugged it off, saying,
They're our family, so it doesn't matter. And so, their cohabitation began forcibly.
Needless to say, my stress levels skyrocketed. Not only this, but Steve took Mike and Karen to a restaurant and allowed them to eat expensive sushi for free. They ate up sushi without a care in the world, chattering and making noise. Steve even announced in front of our other customers,
I'll treat my brother and Karen.
Even our regular customers seemed to find this odd. One of our regulars, a man named Tucker, frowned and warned Steve.
Steve, it's not right to let them eat for free just because they're your family. It will affect the restaurant's business, won't it?
Steve pretended to reflect upon his words, saying,
I'm sorry.
Tucker is our regular customer, and we've been close since I was a child. He's like a beloved grandfather to me. And he's always there for me, saying,
If you ever have a hard time, feel free to talk to me.
However, despite Tucker's warning, Steve didn't stop giving preferential treatment to Mike and Karen. Steve never scolded Mike and always showed a soft smile towards Karen. Watching Steve like this, a suspicion began to form in my mind. I hoped I was just misunderstanding, but my suspicion would later prove correct. When my stress was at its breaking point, a major incident occurred. One day off, Steve, Mike, and Karen told me they had important news.
Actually, we've decided to hand over our restaurant to Mike and Karen. It's been Mike's dream to become a chef, and we thought it would be a good idea.
I felt dizzy. Running a restaurant is tough. I couldn't believe that Mike and Karen could manage it, and I didn't want to give the restaurant that we inherited from our grandparents to people like them. I firmly told them. Then, Steve, Mike, and Karen all became furious. Steve yelled at me loudly.
That's my restaurant. What I do with it is my business. Whether you like it or not, the restaurant will belong to Mike and Karen. If you don't like it, get a divorce.
Mike also arrogantly said,
I'm part of the family too, right? Just give me the restaurant.
Karen berated me, saying,
You're not worthy of that restaurant.
Get out quickly. I was filled with intense anger. I no longer cared what happened to these people. I decided to retaliate against them once and for all. First, I decided to correct the three's misunderstanding. I chuckled to myself, wondering what their faces would look like once they learned the truth.
I don't know what you guys are misunderstanding, but the restaurant is something I inherited from my grandparents. It's in my name, so I can't transfer it to Steve, Mike, or Karen.
As I explained this, my husband looked surprised.
But I'm your husband. I should have the right to do as I please with the restaurant. Inheritances go to blood relatives. Since we don't have children, my inheritance is mine alone.
Steve finally seemed to understand the mechanics of inheritance and was stunned. I was almost dumbfounded by his lack of common sense. Because Steve was so dedicated to sushi, he lacked some common knowledge. I've often felt this way in our married life. Then, Mike started to make a fuss.
Hey, you should have explained this beforehand.
I finally raised my voice in anger.
What? You guys were the ones who proceeded with the conversation based on your misunderstandings. You didn't even give me the time to explain. What are you saying?
Annoyingly, Mike tried to counter further.
But we don't care about whose name it's in. We can run the restaurant on our own. You're no longer needed, so get out.
I really decided to leave. If I stayed here any longer, I thought I might explode with anger. I packed only the essentials, said,
Goodbye,
and stormed out of the house. After leaving the house, I initially stayed in a cheap business hotel. There, I strategized about what to do next. I had no desire to make amends with Steve. I had finally realized that the kind Steve was nowhere to be found. I don't know if that was his true nature or if something had twisted his personality. But suddenly, I felt foolish for trusting such a horrible man. I wanted to punish him. I also wanted Mike and Karen to leave my house. I wondered how I could drive them out. After thinking about it, I made various calls and formally launched a revenge plan. I also went out for a bit, and after about a week, my preparations were complete, so I returned home. Seeing me, Steve and the couple looked triumphant. Steve smirked and looked at me. Hey, finally reflecting and came back, huh?
But returning in just a week, you lack resolve.
Hearing this, the couple laughed heartily. Suppressing my anger, I showed them several photos. They were stunned at that moment, but Steve and Karen's faces turned pale. Meanwhile, Mike asked in confusion,
What are these photos? These are photos proving Steve and Karen's affair,
I declared in a cold tone. The photos showed Steve and Karen walking arm in arm, appearing to enjoy themselves. The other photos also captured their intimate moments. Mike finally seemed to understand the situation and began to blush in anger.
Hey, what is this? You've betrayed me with an affair.
Mike's anger was fierce. However, Steve didn't apologize but instead doubled down.
Shut up. It can't be helped, I fell in love. You were wandering around outside, and I happened to go out with Karen.
Karen also began making pitiful excuses.
It's your fault for not working. Compared to that, Steve is a respectable artisan. It's clear who I would choose.
Karen hasn't been working either, and Steve, who's having an affair, is not someone trustworthy at all. I was beyond angry and more disgusted. The three of them had started a low-level argument, and it seemed like it was spiraling out of control. Somehow, I managed to calm them down, despite the frustration bubbling within me. Once he had calmed down a bit, my husband glared at me.
How did you get these photos? You've been following us? No, I replied. I hired a detective to gather evidence of your affair. That's how I got these pictures.
So, that's why I had been visiting a detective agency. My husband ranted, hiring a detective is cowardly. But the real coward was my adulterous husband. Well, it's unlikely he'd understand that. Then Mike asked a question.
How did you realize my brother was having an affair? You must have suspected something to hire a detective.
I let out a chuckle.
Of course, I could tell. We are married, after all. I noticed right away how excessively sweet he was acting around Karen. The smile he had for her was completely different from the one he showed me or our customers.
My husband was speechless. He must have thought he wouldn't get caught. In his shock, he revealed too much in front of my grandparents, how he'd acted as innocent as a cat, how he had married me for my shop, how he didn't really love me, and so on. I looked at him coldly, my heart aching.
Despite loving you so much, I was betrayed by you. I've endured a lot of pain. Do you understand how much I've suffered? Can you imagine how much you've made me worry?
At my harsh words, my husband finally fell silent. He looked remorseful, but I had no intention of forgiving him. Steve and Karen were silent too, probably feeling awkward. Finally, there was some quiet, and I continued.
I will be claiming damages from both Karen and Steve. Be prepared.
At these words, Karen erupted.
Wait! I have no money! How can you claim damages from someone like me?
I cut off Karen's words.
All you have to do is work and earn money. You can pay in installments. It's inconceivable to hurt someone and not make amends.
Karen, looking shocked, could only manage a week. Okay. And then fell silent again. I took out the divorce papers I had already filled out and made my husband fill in the necessary parts. All I have to do now is submit these to the office, and I can say goodbye to the bothersome man. The matter of the affair was now more or less settled. However, there was still something left to be done by the three of them. I asked them.
You didn't just cause me trouble, did you?
The three of them looked clueless. They really didn't seem to understand, so I reluctantly explained.
You treated the customers of our shop poorly, right? I've been in regular contact with our regulars over the past week, and they all voiced their complaints.
The main complaints were that despite the many mistakes, they never apologized, and they loudly insulted customers in the staff-only area. There was even a claim that Mike tried to steal change. When I told them about these complaints, their faces turned pale.
Since you've caused so much trouble for our valued customers, I'll have you apologize. I'm going to call our regulars now and have you apologize.
I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I briefly explained the situation, and then my husband, Mike, and Karen apologized, in that order. We repeated this process several times. All of our regulars were understandably angry at the three, so the apology took much longer than expected. I knew Tucker's address, so I had them go and apologize to him directly. When Tucker saw the three, he raised his voice.
You were absolutely terrible. How dare you face people with that attitude? No matter how delicious your sushis are, I will never have them again.
Then, he looked at me and smiled kindly.
Natalie, you should cut ties with these people. Even if Steve leaves, a more skilled artisan will come to your place.
Yes, I'm divorcing my husband too. Thank you for all your help. I'm truly grateful. Before carrying out this plan, I had also sought advice from Tucker, which had proven immensely helpful. I thanked him deeply. After leaving Tucker's house, I made sure to let Mike, Steve, and Karen know that I had reported all their misdeeds, including their infidelity, to our regulars.
You three might want to continue working as chefs, but I don't think our regulars will be visiting your restaurant. If they tell others, those people probably won't either,
I said, adding insult to injury. Even if the three didn't run a restaurant, the mental damage of their embarrassment being known to so many people would be significant. I told them to pack their things and get out immediately, which they did. After they were kicked out, they seemed to get into a heated argument about what to do next. They were making such a commotion in the street that the police were called and they were taken away. They were trouble to the end. The three didn't end up with criminal records, but they did split up and started living separately. Mike and Karen got divorced too. I submitted the divorce papers to the government office and cleanly cut ties with my husband. Mike is still unemployed and living a poor life. I heard he's struggling daily to dodge debt collectors because of the substantial debt he owes. As I promised, I demanded alimony from my husband and Karen. Karen seems to have found a job for now. However, she was unemployed for a long time, so she can't suddenly become a high earner, and her salary seems to be quite low compared to her peers. My husband also managed to find a job and relocated to a remote state where he didn't know anyone. Yet, rumors have a way of leaking out, and their past wrongdoings became known, leaving them with no place to hide. In particular, my husband and Karen have to keep working to pay their debts. I imagine their days are tougher than they expected. I hope they suffer. Even after my husband left, the restaurant is doing well. My regulars, who learned about the incident, started coming to the restaurant more frequently to support me. I had fewer chances to be in the kitchen due to my husband, but I've been practicing in secret, so my skills haven't deteriorated. The enjoyable days have returned, and I am living a fulfilling life. We've also gained a new employee. She's a girl who just graduated from vocational school. She's still an apprentice and has a lot to learn, but I sense a flair in her. Her attitude towards the customers is excellent, so she's well regarded among the regulars. Since we're both women, we found it easier to connect with each other, and she sometimes confides in me about her worries. I think we're building a good relationship. I even consider having her inherit the restaurant in the future. But I intend to keep doing my best as an active chef for now. While cherishing this restaurant that I inherited from my grandparents, I want to keep growing both as a sushi chef and as an individual.